everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Dukaran. I'm a program coordinator at Rutgers Department of Continuing Studies, and I'll be the moderator for this session. On behalf of the 2022 Rutgers University Online Learning Conference, I welcome Fred Dixon, CEO of Blindside Networks, and Christina Bifulco, Associate Director for Teaching and Learning Analytics at Rutgers University. We're pleased to have them present effective use of learning analytics in synchronous online classes. During the presentation, please engage using the chat and QA features available on the right-hand side. If you run into any technical errors or have any problems, feel free to comment in the chat and I'll do my best to help you out. Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to effective use of learning analytics in synchronous online classes. I am Christina Bifulco.
Hi, I'm Fred Dixon. I'm the CEO of Blindside Networks.
All right. So we're excited to present to you today and discuss with you today about all of this. So let's get right into it. So the agenda. So we're going to talk a little bit about learning analytics theory first, and then we want to open it up to have a little bit of a discussion about using learning analytics during asynchronous online classes, so those live classes that you are running synchronously, and then get some of your feedback on learning analytics dashboard designs in BigBlueButton. So first, a little bit about the learning analytics theory, and this is going to include a little bit about learning theory, because I think the two are entwined quite a bit. First, thinking about the definition of learning analytics. So this is the SOLAR definition: the measurement, collection, analysis, and reporting of data about learners and their context for purposes of understanding and optimizing learning and the environments in which it occurs. So there are actually quite a few definitions of learning analytics out there, but when I was looking at all of these different definitions, what always comes to the forefront for me is that there are similarities, and the overlap is the purpose. The purpose is really to help students, right? To promote understanding and learning and optimize those environments for students. And that is really what learning analytics is all about. Now, I think it's hard to talk about learning analytics without talking about the limitations. As in anything, there are limitations, right? Learning analytics is going to show you a small piece of the picture, right? A small piece of the puzzle. And it doesn't always give you all of the information that you need, but it does provide some information. Right? Technology actually impacts that data. So for instance, if you have videos that you have in Kaltura or PlayPosit that have the questions embedded within the videos, pop-up blockers or something like that can make it seem like a student didn't actually watch a video when they did. So that there are different ways that the technology itself can impact the data that you're getting from the systems. But it is providing a lot of data for faculty to use. And in a way, it can be a limitation in just that, a lot of data is coming in and it could be very overwhelming to see all of this information about your students, particularly if you have those large classes of a couple hundred, right? Now, most of the platforms that you're going to be using too, most of the learning analytics data that you're getting from your learning management system like Canvas or Blackboard or whatever your institution uses are going to be data that you are then going to need to interpret as the instructor and take actions on, right? So it's not, most of the platforms are not adaptive, so they aren't automatically pushing students to new materials, but those interpretations and what you're doing from that point with that data, it's going to be based upon your decision as the faculty member. Now, we though, as as instructors, as faculty teaching, right, we are very accustomed to working with what we have. We take what we have and we work with it and do the very best that we can for our students. And I think that's what we really have to look at. So some of the literature that you'll see about learning analytics will talk about how the limitations are large at this point, right? And there's some of those limitations that we've already talked about, and there's also some discussion about how learning analytics is not as connected to learning as we really need it to be. But at the same time, I would just urge you to really think through, we have this data, there is information that we can get out of it and information that we can use to support our students. And again, that's really what this is all about. So I wanted to really talk about a little bit about what some of the learning science behind some of this data that I'm going to talk about in a second that you can get out. So learning is actually a physical change within the brain. So learning is a difficult process, which I think a lot of us know, right? And it can't actually occur without a physical change within the brain. So it is a very active process for the student, right? It's not, the student is not going to be that empty vessel that the instructor is just going to come along and fill to the brim with knowledge. It is a process by the student. And that's really, the all of the background, all the foundation literature around active learning is because of this information that we know about how learning occurs within the brain. So I've picked out some of the other details about research on learning that I think is particularly relevant in the synchronous online. So the first one is that better retention, that students will have better retention when new information is linked to prior knowledge. So prior knowledge, right, is what the students are already coming in with. They're not coming in as empty vessels either. They're coming in with information from past classes, from past experiences, from their culture, right? And some of the learning research has found that making sure that students are able to link the new information that they're learning to their old information is going to create a stronger connection, more understanding, and the ability to pull it out of their memory easier. Now, it's also just really important to pull out that prior knowledge because they may have some misconceptions that need to be addressed. So you want to make sure that you have that opportunity to talk to students if they have any, little ideas that aren't quite correct. You want to make sure that the foundation they are building their new information on is adequate to support it. So checking for those misconceptions is going to be really, really essential. Now, some of the other research that has been done has been on experts versus novices. And what they have found is that expert knowledge is highly organized when they compare it to novices. And they've actually done a lot of research with chess players, which I find really interesting. But they have found that experts are able to notice patterns in the information, and all of that content that they have about the subject matter is highly organized. They understand all of the connections. They understand that deep conceptual knowledge of their field, versus novices who, have a harder time connecting all the dots. And this actually allows, so the brain is organized with schema, which basically connects different pieces of information together. And when you organize that information within a schema, within a kind of a chart of how everything is pulled together, right? It allows for that individual to transfer that knowledge to different applications as appropriate. And it also allows them to retrieve it from their memory much more efficiently. The third piece that I wanted to talk about, and I'm sure as instructors you hear about this quite frequently, is the importance of constructive and timely feedback. Now, part of the reasoning for this is actually linked to some of that research from the beginning that I was just talking about with the prior knowledge, right? If a student is going through work and they take on a misconception, or they do, my discipline is mathematics. Sometimes I see a student that does a problem correctly, but does something incorrectly. So they're using a principle that is not correct, and it just happened to work in that question. If that misconception is not corrected in a timely manner, they're going to keep that idea in their head, and they're not going to be able to move forward with the new content. So the feedback that students are getting needs to be constructive. So it's directly linked to, what they're doing so that they understand how they can make those changes, and then timely. And actually, there was a study, Kettle and Hubble, at the bottom there, they did a study that found that students who expected that feedback more quickly were more engaged within the task, were really looking to make sure that they did the best possible. So all of these different elements on learning, right, lets us think about how can we use those learning analytics, how can we use some of the features within synchronous online platforms to kind of support student learning. So some of the ones that you may think about are custom questions and registration. So how you might be able to use this. So if you have students register and you have them do a few questions in the beginning, that can be their opportunity to kind of activate that prior knowledge that they already have. Maybe it's bringing in something that they learned from another class, or maybe it's something that they learned in your class just a few classes ago that they're going to need for this class. So being able to kind of prompt them and to activate that prior knowledge can be a great way that you can use those custom questions. It can also just be that reflection too of that metacognition, having them think about their thinking, having them think about their learning. Now, this is also an opportunity, right, for you can also do something similar in polls. So polls are a fabulous way to kind of get student feedback and to give student feedback, right? If you have a poll and 50% of the students got an incorrect answer, that can tell you as the instructor, hey, I need to look at this. We need to think about this as a class and come back to it. I really like, it definitely takes some more effort, but when I'm doing polls, I've actually really started to try to think about the options I'm giving them and think about those common mistakes or common misconceptions that students may have and put those as the answer choices. Because that also allows me as the instructor to know, 20% of the students picked this incorrect answer. Those students probably have this misconception, that probably need this kind of feedback to or clarification about the content to properly move on. So the polls can provide that great opportunity for students to assess what they know, right? But to also get feedback from the instructor. This is also something that you could do with a whiteboard, right? Having them think through what they already have learned. But the whiteboard is another opportunity for students to actually create concept maps. And concept maps, and under concept maps, I put timelines, any visual representation of how all the different pieces that they're learning are connected. So again, experts are able to clearly organize all that information that they have, and that allows them to quickly pull it up and retrieve it from their brain. So helping students to kind of think through all those connections in a visual representation can help them form deeper conceptual understanding of the content. So the whiteboard can be that great opportunity to have with students to do that. I really like to do this with students in groups. So if you have them go into breakout rooms and they each have a whiteboard that they are able to start drawing their concept maps, pulling all the students together to then say, okay, let's share our concept maps. Let's talk about these connections. And again, going back to that other piece too, providing feedback is really important on the concept maps. Again, to make sure that everyone is on the same page, there are no misconceptions that are going to get stored in their long-term memory and mess them up in the future. So these are all different ways that we can use those different opportunities, that different data within the Synchronous platform to kind of support students and their learning within the class. All right. So what we'd love to have, what we'd love to be able to do now is have a bit of a discussion, right? Um, you know, what analytics are you using today and what is the benefit? Feel free to type in the chat. We'd love to hear all of your thoughts. And this can be in a synchronous class, or it can be in a, in the learning management system. What are you using at this point?
It's also interesting to point out, like in a synchronous online class, the goal is to engage the brain, and polling, and I would say chat is another. So we are hoping to engage your brains here. And let
Great.
me ask, if for those that use analytics, what is it what is the question you're trying to answer when you look at the analytics? Is it engagement? Are you looking for outliers? Are you benchmarking? Like, what are you looking for from the perspective of a teacher? Or what would you like to see that you don't quite see yet from the perspective of a teacher or instructor? And I believe if anybody wants to join the audio too, they can just request to join, and you can talk as well.
Yeah, I like Tim's comment about using it for continuous improvement of our online courses, because I think we are we're talking about student learning. We're talking about improving student learning, but all of that data is giving us really great information too, just about our courses themselves and our curriculum. So that could be a great way to use that data as well.
Yeah, Chad. And Faye, the effectiveness of instruction method, can you give an example of that? Like, what would you measure, or what metric would you look for that? And Lynn, well, as well, like engagement via use of chats. Are you looking for, I would, the number of chat messages that students send out, the frequency? How would you judge it, whether it's good engagement or minimal engagement?
Yeah, I love the chat waterfall as well. It's one of my favorite opportunities to get some feedback from students, and it makes them all accountable, right? By saying, okay, everybody, it's that idea of like you need some time to think about your own thoughts. Like that's the basis of the think, pair, share, right? Like you're thinking individually so that you'll be able to share. So doing a chat waterfall is a great way to kind of allow them that opportunity to think through. Sometimes I know it can be difficult though with, at least I've experienced with larger classes, knowing what students have participated in which have not in the chat. But yeah, but the polling is another great way to kind of do that.
Hi, Bihai. Anything you want to add?
No, actually, I was just wondering, I had a question. Can I ask my question right now?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to get some information about, I wrote actually the best software or program to use to, in purpose of analyzing the data when you use the student log data, for example, in learning management system, or for the, for analyzing the data. What do you use usually?
I don't know the answer. If you're using Canvas, I would say go back and speak to your Canvas coordinator. Like, what LMS are you using?
Canvas.
Yeah. I think others have the answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just use, I think at this point, right, it's really hard to kind of combine all the data into one location, which I think is what you're kind of looking for. If you're looking mostly within Canvas though, I would just use, they have new analytics. So that'll have all of their native tools and like their native Canvas applications within there. So you're not going to find other tools like PlayPosit or Kaltura, or, I don't think like the BigBlueButton analytics are in there natively, but they, the new analytics will give you like all the other kind of like assignment pieces. But pulling everything out and trying to combine everything, I wouldn't suggest that at this point. I think that's going to be really hard for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know I saw somebody before mentioned looking at like the PlayPosit data. And so PlayPosit, I don't know how many of you use it, but it's a tool that allows you to have the video recordings with the questions embedded. And it was really interesting because last semester, I looked at my PlayPosit data and I realized that there was one student who was watching the videos. I mean, they would be like 10 or 15-minute videos, but he was watching them in 3 minutes. And it's really interesting. I had given the students the option of fast forwarding because that's the way I like to watch videos. But it kind of started this process of me thinking through, okay, should I not allow that? Should I just have a conversation with the student about, what's going to support his learning the best? So again, it goes back to the idea though that, it's still the instructor that kind of has to think through this process of using the information.
I'm tempted to ask too, like we have 3 questions up there. This part of this talk is to sort of try to ask the question, okay, we have analytics. We know we have analytics in the LMS, like you said, do analytics with Canvas. But there's such an explosion of synchronous online classes. What can learning analytics do to support the teacher in a synchronous online? And I'd be interested to just ask that directly. If you could wave a magic wand, what analytics would you like to have access to during your synchronous class that could help you assess the student's learning performance during the class? We need kind of a who is typing here so we could tell. I'm sure folks are typing, and it's a leading question, by the way, just to introduce myself a little bit further. So I'm also the product manager for BigBlueButton, which is a virtual classroom that has been in development since 2007. We're deeply embedded into Canvas and Moodle and Jenzabar and Schoology and others. And we think a lot about teaching and learning. How can we help the teacher better engage the students? How can we help the learners learn? We see lots of analytics out there. We're trying to push the envelope a bit and provide that analytics live. And that's part of the desire here, is to look at some of the theory behind it, how it could be used I could do a group discussion and kind of share and hopefully get some feedback from yourselves if we can show you some things that will look, could show you the potential of more of what the potential could be for a virtual online class. Yeah, Brian, it's interesting. So what Zoom was doing was just telling you if the application was active. We're trying to look a little bit more in terms of like, formative analysis, where you can determine or insights from just activities that are going on, not a summative analysis, if I have that correct, like the exam at the end, but activities that go on during the online class. Some of it's been touched on before, like chat and maybe raise hand or polls. That information is usually only available in terms of after the class is over, like, okay, which students were really active during the class? Really nice to know that during the class. So Zoom was just trying to look at, were you looking at the screen? But I don't think that's very useful from a learning point of view. It tells you that they're looking at the screen, but sure, okay, but you've got 25 students who was actually engaged during the class, and looking at the screen may not be, according to what Christine was talking about, like the brain has to work. You want to be engaged, you have to be thinking, and that's more than looking at the screen. Interesting, Monica. Yeah, polling. I mean, you can learn a lot from people's responses to polls, who responds, whether they got them correct or not, how quickly they responded. There's some metrics there. Yes, in terms of like engagement as well. Are they paying attention, Priscilla? Yeah. And I think that's better. That's somewhat judged not by so much looking at the screen, but giving them lots of opportunities to get engaged, polling, raise hand, breakout rooms, talk, share webcam. And if someone does none of these through the class, probably not as engaged as, let's say, the rest of the class that are actively engaged and responding. I think, Christina, I could take it over for the next section. So as I said earlier, I am the product manager for BigBlueButton, which is designed for one market, online learning. We've been thinking about teaching and learning for since 2007. The product was first created in a university here in Canada, and it's an open source project, and we have been working on it pretty hard over the last couple of years. The last couple of years have been very interesting with COVID. So if you haven't seen it, that's a screenshot of it. I may show you live in a few minutes here, but I have some screenshots as well. So it's really what you would expect in terms of like seeing students, hearing them, sharing your screen, uploading slides, multi-user whiteboard, polling, breakout rooms, shared notes, lots of capabilities. There are three things that we focus on though, because again, we don't think of ourselves as a video conferencing system. We think of ourselves as a virtual classroom, which means we try to assist the teacher in applying pedagogy and assessing students' performance and making it possible for the students to feel like they're engaged and the teacher cares about them. And there's three areas we look at in integration and engagement, and in the focus of this, which is analytics. So just in terms of like, we've been at this for quite a while. I put up this chart. This is the learning management systems that are available, the major ones. And this is in North America. So it shows Canvas. We are natively embedded in Canvas. It's not an LTI. Natively embedded in Sakai. Same thing for Moodle. Actually, Moodle 4 is building the integration into the Moodle core. So next month when it's available, you'll see BigBlueButton built into Moodle for everyone who uses it. Integrated with Schoology, natively integrated with Jenzabar, and even Brightspace. Brightspace uses it. They call it something different, but because we're open source, they're able to take it, rebrand it. Point here is that it's the standard for built-in virtual classrooms. And that's all the major systems that are using us. So in terms of engagement, so I said there's three things: integration, engagement, and analytics. So all the types of engagements that you would expect. And then the question that we are asking here is like, how can we help the instructor with teaching the class and giving them information that they can use to assess? What Christina was talking about was the analytics, trying to look at them and present them in a way that is going to give meaning to the instructor. So what we've done is spend a lot of time thinking about how can we do this live during the class. And so we'd like to get people's feedback on this. You may have seen this already, but I'm going to show you stuff that's already in the product. And I'm going to show you stuff that we're working on, and love to get your feedback. So during a live class, three questions the instructor could be asking is: who's attending, who's engaged, which is kind of the thread of discussion we're talking about, like how do you measure the engagement? Are they, I mean, one way is staring at the screen, another way is they're interacting. And who is learning based on responses to polls. Because if you ask polls, if you're in a class and you're halfway through it and you ask a bunch of polls, and after 5 questions, you kind of get this sense that people aren't quite getting it, we think we can do better. We think we can tell you exactly who's not getting it. So if for those of you that have used BigBlueButton, but it doesn't really matter, it's just there's an ability for the instructor to launch something. This is getting you into how this would look, the Learning Analytics dashboard, and then a page would come up. And in that page, it will show you live who's in your session, so you can see the list of names, how long they've been in the session, like their online time. So if they joined for 1 minute, left, and then 30 minutes later came back for 1 minute, we would show them 2 minutes. Talk time, webcam time, messages, emojis, raise hand. And from that, we create an activity score, which is kind of like a rough assessment. Person who talked the most would get 2 points. Everyone gets a percentage thereafter. Person who messages the most gets 2 points. Everyone gets a percentage thereafter. So it's a relative score. But nonetheless, if somebody has not got, here's an example of a session. I think I have, yes. Okay, this is an example of the attendance, and this is an example of the activity score. So here, it's basically showing some point scale. And this person here probably looks like they shared the webcam the most, or talked the most. And it's allow you to judge. And the whole idea is to see, are the students engaged? Are they interactive? And if there's anybody who's got like a very low score, which may be fine, it's up to the instructor to judge, you can tell that they're not as engaged as others. The polls, you don't have to remember the polls. So if I said earlier there were 5 polls that had been doing, and you kind of get the sense that the students are quite engaged, we can show you the results of the polls. So here are 2 examples where I did some polls, and you can see if there's a particular student that got something wrong. Albert Einstein did not discover the atom. Or if one person got everything wrong, you can tell that right away. So I actually have it live here. So I'm in a session right now. I have 2 students. They joined with Firefox. So here I am. So if I go into public chat and say hi, and I've done some polls, and as the instructor, I may be wondering, well, what were the results to polls? So I bring up the dashboard. I can see who's most active by the activity score, and I can go to the polls. So if I do another poll and I say, I'll just do one simple, that's going to be just true, false. And I go over here and I say true, and I go over here and I say false. In a moment, we'll update that. So as the session goes on, the instructor doesn't have to remember anything. They can see and they can look at, based on the results of the polls, how the students are absorbing the material, or are they understanding it? And there I can see it. So this in a 2-monitor setup would be great. You can have virtual classroom 1 and the Learning Analytics dashboard in the other. I'm going to show you some designs of what we're working on, but I would like to ask, like, would you see this being used, or would you see how you may use this in your online class? Or is there information that we're not showing that you'd like to see? Because we're going to continue to iterate on this. We put a lot of work into getting the data live, and we want to make sure that we're providing the data and the analytics that helps the instructor. So it's your chance to influence the product direction if you have any feedback on what you've seen so far. And while you're thinking about that, I will show some of the designs that we're working on. Okay. So one thing that you may be interested in is we were just showing everybody's view, but not relative to others in terms of how it breaks down. So we'd like to say, if you were thinking that a particular user was struggling with that, to be able to click on their name and see a graph of exactly when they were in the session, like did they join for a minute at the beginning, a minute at the end. You could see all of their scores relative to the medium for others. So if the medium was, if every student was doing, let's say, a message and a half, kind of funny, it's not really possible to do a message and a half, but let's just say for a moment you could do 1.5 chat messages. Then this person got got 2 points because they were the one, looks like the one that did the most chat. There's emojis, raise hand, and poll votes. So we're trying to show like a breakdown relative to others. Again, we're providing data that we let the instructor interpret, and we leave it to the instructor to decide whether this is going to help them at this moment in time. But there's lots of data that goes on in a synchronous online class that if you had access to, it'd be useful. It could save you some cognitive effort. And here we can also show, the idea is we could show the responses to polls and then the most common answer. And the idea would be is in the next version, we would actually allow the instructor to indicate which is the correct answer in a poll. So when you show the results, you could actually score it in terms of how many people got correct answers, and then for each individual person, how they are rated to each other. So there's more we can do with the analytics, but I would be interested if there's any feedback on what we have done so far, because we feel like we're pushing the envelope of what's possible in a virtual classroom to try to provide teachers data that acts almost like a co-pilot. And now I'll turn around and ask if there's any feedback you have on this, but I realize I can't see who's typing. It's a feature we have in BigBlueButton, which is very useful, by the way, because you can tell if folks are actually engaged. But nonetheless, this is what we wanted to cover. This is our effort to push the envelope in terms of building a more responsive virtual classroom that is purpose-built for the teacher and provide them real-time analytics that helps them teach their class and get a sense, because it's hard online. Even us here, Christine and I are kind of trying to read through the screen to see how folks are engaged in this. So yeah. So great. Connection quality, Patissa, it's a good point. We do know that on the server side, we could propagate it up to the instructor to let them know, hey, I've got 25 students and 2 of them are showing problems with connections. Less will be a danger to interpret data equity without knowing the bandwidth connectivity to the other end of the device. It's a good point. The intent here is not to, it's not meant for grading. It's really meant for giving the instructors insight into information that's coming at them in real time, but it's really hard to track in real time. You could try to watch the users list and see how long everyone's there, but why would you if the system could tell you? Or you would try to remember everyone's answers to polls, but why would you if the system could do it? So we're really trying to lower the cognitive effort. But yes, you don't want to, if we matched up with what Priscilla said and showed connection issues, and you could attribute a low amount of engagement because the student is probably maybe on a poor connection. What is the ease, and would you need to have a second screen to be able to navigate both? So here I'm just flipping back and forth between them. I do have 2 monitors here. It is easier, of course, to have 2 screens. And I mean, we would argue that screens are pretty cheap. And I'm sure if you asked Rutgers, they would buy a second screen for you and ship it to you tomorrow. That was a joke, by the way. I am not Rutgers. Don't take me seriously. But yes, 2 monitors would be more effective for teaching. It's just you can do so much more. So yes, having this open as a second screen, you literally could just be teaching the class, and this will update for you every 10 seconds. That's what we have. And we can design whatever data, whatever happens in a class, we can try to pull that and surface it, try to make it sort of like your co-pilot. I'm using the aviation analogy. Oh yeah, Lynn, agreed. I mean, a laptop easily have a second monitor. I think most of the folks at our companies have 3 monitors. So this is really good. Connectivity is one. Is there any other data that you would like to have? Again, if you could wave a magic wand, and this is the feedback for us. Do we have a platform to embed open-ended questions and assess? Yes. So if you said, I can show you, if I start a poll and I say, I'll just use a simple one. What is your, let's say, what is the color of metal when it is about to, it is really, what is the color of a flame? That's what I'm looking for, a flame, very hot flame. And then I just want to have users respond. So if I go over here, I can say, let's say it's green, and I'll go with the other user. I think the answer is blue. They could do white and so on. So I can see the responses coming back, and then I can publish them here, and I can see it. If I go to the dashboard, in a moment, I would see the poll results. And if I actually had the ability to, which we're working to add in, indicate which are the correct answers, then the dashboard, imagine it's highlighting to show you all the correct answers. And then that gives you a kind of a visual scale gradient in terms of, does everybody answering correctly, or is there some that are not? And maybe maybe it would show you that this person is not answering all the correct ones. This is a good example, right? Like forcing recall. Can you remember it? Breakout rooms is another example I want to touch on. I'm not showing the designs here. Maybe for the next, you'll see them come out from us. But if you put people into breakout rooms, instructors are probably quite interested on what students are doing, how active they are in the breakout rooms, what they're working on. Are they creating content? Are they ready to come back to the main room? Right now, I suspect you're trying to go from breakout room to find that out. Again, we could tell you. Imagine in the Learning Analytics dashboard, you could see live how each breakout room is doing. And then you know if there's a particular one to go into. Goes again back to what Christina said, timely feedback is really important for learning. So if you were observing that one person or one group was struggling and can give them feedback, then that's a big win in terms of like using your time, but also reinforces the value for students or for groups to come to the live class. Sharona, how to allow students to see each other in the classroom. At one time, only teacher could see unless the breakout rooms. Is that different now? Yes. Students should be able to see up to 7 of each other. They can tab back and forth between the list. And they can also, in breakout rooms, see everybody. And I think we even have more capabilities coming in the video in terms of scaling it up. So yes to the video. Okay, and then Rachel, trouble getting in and out of breakout rooms. I think we have some improvements coming for that as well for the next release. Palinga has the option to write formula bar, math symbols, math-related questions. We have some updates coming to the whiteboard as well. I have to be honest, it's not yet the math symbols, but you're going to see some updates coming to the whiteboard. That's probably this summer. That is going to be looking more like a kind of like a pretty powerful whiteboard that's now built into BigBlueButton. And with that, we can build on top of it to get you eventually to the math symbols. But we're going to do some across the board improvements to whiteboard as well. Okay, this was very useful in terms of like we weren't thinking so much on connectivity information, but if we could add that to the dashboard, it could tell you which students were experiencing connectivity. If we can get to a place where the questions that you ask students actually have a correct answer, it can even show you a more powerful view of how the polling is. And just to touch base on what someone added earlier, all this data exists live. We would love to get this back in some way into their learning management system. I think we're going to be able to do some pretty cool things with Moodle because we are now embedded in the Moodle core. And so you get to see some unified reports now, what people are doing synchronous and asynchronous. And again, just pushing the envelope in terms of how much data that we can get back into the hands of instructor at a high level to help them teach. Yes, Rachel. Okay, yes to math. Not yet today, but in the future. All right, I think this is what we hope to achieve, is to show you some of the theory around learning analytics, do a group discussion, and how this might be applied in a live synchronous class. We're really passionate about trying to provide instructors the most powerful virtual classroom, the most teacher-centric virtual classroom. So you're going to see more on learning analytics, certainly more live, and if we can have our way, we'll be getting more into the LMS as well. Christine, I think that's all that I would have, and I'll just be happy to wait around for folks. We are the last session of the day, so there's nothing to rush away to. If you want to engage us further, I think we'll be here.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. And yeah, we invite any questions that you have.
And thanks, Lynn. Yeah, the Learning Analytics dashboard is live now. Anyone at Rutgers can use it. It went live early January, so you'll be able to bring it up and use that to track responses to polls, engagement, and attendance. At some point, Christina, if we want to get really formal about this as we push the envelope, maybe do some studies, maybe even write a paper about it. I haven't tried to look through the literature, but I see lots of Learning Analytics dashboard, but it's all in the context of, well, traditional learning management systems, but not much synchronous live.
No, not yet. I asked some learning analytics colleagues from across the country if they had heard anything, and they said, "Oh, that is really interesting." No, not yet.
Okay. So I would like to, I have to follow up because, the question I guess would be is to do some sort of assessment of how effective this would be for the instructor, how to measure that effectiveness, maybe in a double-blind study, because I think there's something there. I just think it hasn't been done before because people were thinking very much in video, but there's a lot of rich data that goes back and forth. I'm going to copy this chat too, if I can copy it. Yeah. Yeah, we're just hanging around for a few more moments. If anyone else has anything else they want to say, if not, we will, as before, we'll wish you all a good day. We'll wait 1 or 2 more minutes. I think we're good. You're welcome, Les. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you.
I think we're good, Christina.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Me too.
All right, Mark, I'm sure we'll hopefully get alert when the recording's coming available. Do you know how quickly they'll make it available?
I did see the ones for this morning are all already available. So I think it'll be quite quick. Mark, do you have a better answer to that?
Yeah, so generally after the session is over, I think within the half hour, they should become available pretty quickly. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Excellent. There was a part about Canvas there that I want to reuse. All right, Mark, Christina, look, have a great day. This was fun.
You too.
All right.
Thank you
Bye for
both.
now.
Have a great day. Thank you everyone for attending. The session has concluded and you'll be able to access it in the replay shortly after the session has concluded. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.